The movie begins as Teresa Chaney narrates about a memory she has where she opened up her old music box and put it back together. When her dad asks why, she tells him it's because she realized she could. We see Teresa trying out an experiment on time travel. When she opens the metallic cylinder with the small window on top, she finds a cat and can't believe it. Teresa dresses up and calls her co-worker, who doesn't even know who Teresa is, and asks her to go out since she is celebrating. But when the woman asks if it's her birthday, she dismisses the idea and goes out alone for a drink. At the bar, a man approaches her, asking some personal questions before he offers that they go to his place. Teresa decides that it is getting late, and as she is leaving, she hears the man insulting her. She went home after watching a movie and tried to come up with a name for her experiment. She ends up calling it Shifter, but decides that the world is not ready for it.
You're right. The world isn't ready.
In the morning, Teresa fed her new cat and went to her workplace. She walks up to the woman she called last night and they awkwardly wished her a happy birthday. In the elevator, her supervisor scolds her for trying to fix the machines herself instead of calling her. She warns her not to pull another stunt like this or she will harm her. A neighbor shows up who knows Teresa's family and starts to ask her private questions. The lady then tells her a story of her childhood friend who used to live there and how she thought the house was haunted. She used to hear sounds and screams before they saw an apparition in the living room. She leaves after telling Teresa to contact her if she needs anything.
Swore that this place was haunted.
Teresa had completed her test on a cat, and next was to try it on a human. She goes to a diner and finds her brother, Ed Campbell, who tries to give excuses for him not being able to help with her dad and apologizes about his funeral, but Teresa ignores him and won't answer him. Later that night, she receives a call from a man named Curtis Mathers, who asks her for a drink since he is now in the same city as she is. She happily agrees to see him. On the date, Teresa is a bit nervous, but Curtis tells her to loosen up. He then kept getting distracted by his phone as she told him about what's been in her life. He then leaves to take a phone call, and his wedding rings fall as he gets back. She goes to the barn where she does her experiments and tries out her third test on herself. She programmed the device to take her 2 hours back from the present. It works, and she leaves the barn to see her other self getting ready for the date. She hid behind her truck and went to the date. She sees Curtis heading to the date after he leaves his wedding ring in the car. She then goes and breaks his windows before taking his ring with her. As he leaves the date to take a phone call, Teresa slips his wedding ring into his pocket, which he will later drop inside. She witnesses herself doing time travel. The next morning, she went back to her routine before she recorded the time she traveled back in her notebook. Lonely, Teresa went into her dad's room and got rid of all his stuff. She gets home and puts food in her cat's bowl, which she now calls Bernard, but he doesn't show up. The next day at her workplace, Teresa starts to get stomach aches. She then went into the bathroom and saw a woman throwing up inside the toilet. Teresa went home and saw Bernard and was calling him cute names as the other Bernard walked behind her. Soon her stomachache began and she went to her bathroom to throw up. She finds the food she was making burnt, and when she checks her phone, it is 2 hours away. Teresa went to see a doctor, and he told her the cause for her blackouts could be stress, and that she might need to take time off just to relax. Teresa went out for a walk, and she took a nap when she got home holding her cat. Soon, she hears the cat, and when she wakes up, she sees it bleeding before he vanishes. She ran to check her papers, but heard noises in the living room. When she came back, she saw her cat alive.
What's wrong?
She calls her supervisor to tell her she is not feeling well, but was made to go to work anyway. At work, she starts to get stomach aches, and after she went to the bathroom, she saw herself bleeding, just like how her cat did. She then starts vomiting uncontrollably before she hears someone walking and sees through the crack that it's her from the other day. She goes to work with the other, Teresa hiding behind the truck, and starts following her at work too. She went to the barn, and while recording her recent travel, she found her cat's hair was coming off. Teresa went to the library and found a drawing of a cat on a table. Blake shows up as Teresa is murmuring to the drawing. Blake confesses her insecurity and asks Teresa what she is working on. As she was replying, her stomach ache began and she left. At work, her supervisor scolds her once again for being less productive and making every work go slow. As she was talking, Teresa saw everything in slow motion and found her hair falling out. She decided to leave and told the supervisor she quit. Inside the barn, Teresa learns that the device is taking them out of their freezer, and so their temporal existence is melting. She only wishes to put herself back to where she belongs. She experimented to stabilize temporal permanence on herself. While she was waiting, she started to bleed, but it stopped, and she did the same experiment to the cat. Teresa went to the library and was typing on her laptop when Blake showed up and asked if what she'd been working on was now ready to be read. Teresa says that there have been some improvements. As she is leaving, Blake runs up to her and asks if she wants to go out for coffee with her. They make plans to meet the next afternoon. She went to the movies where they were asked to be quiet during the whole movie. Teresa was in pain and was coughing up blood. Soon she started to rip apart inside the theater, and then the people left. Once she was conscious, she went outside. At the barn, she records her last travel was approximately 16 days forward. She then sees that her cat hasn't eaten his food. She calls for her neighbor, who came to visit the other day, and asks if she could come over for tea, but the woman declines, and that makes Teresa upset. Her name, as the news called her, the Melting Girl, is all over the newspaper. Teresa was throwing up in her bathroom when another Teresa from the future showed up by the door. She heard the one throwing up inside and screaming after she shut the door. She then went out to get groceries and started to have a breakdown outside as she dropped the things she bought. Blake shows up behind her and asks about their plan to meet and why she ditched. Teresa offers that they meet for drinks, to which Blake agrees. Over drinks, Blake asks Teresa why she took quantum physics as a hobby, but she replies that it's a curse and she is doing it because she realizes she can. She starts to leave, but she meets up with the man who made a pass on her and who insulted her the last time she went out alone for a drink. He wouldn't let her through, but Blake intervenes and punches him in the face as he starts commenting on Teresa. But Teresa tells her she doesn't need her help before she punches him. At home, Blake puts ice on her fists, and Teresa starts to confess to her that she has no friends to talk about things with. That makes her overwhelmed as a lot is going on in her life right now. She tells her about the device she built, how her body's been deteriorating after she tried it on herself, and how much it hurt. Blake asks whether it's the device that's hurting her. She tells her she wants to understand, but Teresa tells her she doesn't want to be a burden. Blake draws her a cat before they start making out. They went to her bedroom and were still making out when Teresa started coughing blood, and soon she started to rip apart again. She holds on to Blake, and Blake starts to rip too while screaming. Teresa woke up at a random house and she rushed to the library to see Blake, but she soon learns that Blake quit a week ago without telling her where she will be. Teresa then goes to the barn and destroys the device she invented. A scared girl holding her doll close walks into the living room to find shadows of a person before her parents come to see it too. Teresa was making herself a drink when her old neighbor showed up. She tells her she was here a couple of months ago to see her, but Teresa wasn't around. She brought her tomatoes and left them by the door when Teresa wouldn't open the door to let her in. The neighbor asks her if there's anything she could do to help, and Teresa walks out the house. She then started to crack open, and her face was swollen. Once she got back inside the house, she found her father's wheelchair that she got rid of the other day. She walks into her father's room and finds him alive. She hid in the closet, and the other Teresa walked in holding groceries. Her dad tries to point her towards the hidden Teresa, but she ignores him and goes to talk with her brother Ed Campbell. She's trying to make him stay to help her out with their father, but he tells her he needs to go find a job in another country and that it's urgent. He then leaves while she begs him to stay and help. The sick Teresa is eavesdropping and walks up to her dad and tells him she will never be like him. She drove and went to her brother Ed Campbell at the diner. She punches him and he asks if she needs help since her face makes her look sick. She tells him that there's only one person who can help her now before she walks out. She went into the barn and found the cat drawing Blake gave her. She also finds the device she built because now she is at the time before it was destroyed. She starts telling herself, the one who hasn't tried the experiment yet, that she has built the device perfectly, but she can't use it because if she does, she will lose everything and everyone. She then gets into the device to go back 2 years, 1 month, and 14 days. She left the device when it didn't work, but soon she starts getting sick and throwing up blood. She went back to her house, but found it was sold. She walks outside and sees her cat, Bernard. She follows him into the barn but sees him cracking open. She walks up to him and starts to cry, before she starts to disappear inside the empty barn. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our recap. Watch our next videos on the screen, and don't forget for more amazing recaps. See you on the next one.